Hello, and welcome to another TMRN, Time Monk Radio Network production. I'm McLaren, your host for this program. Today is Saturday, December 10, 2011, and rejoining us today is Bix Weir. Bix runs the roadtoruta.com website and offers his insights regarding movements and price changes of gold and silver to his subscribers. The premise behind the Road to Ruta theory is that there are good guys and bad guys in the monetary and financial world operating behind the scenes. The good guys are acting to return the USA and potentially thereby the world to a basis of sound money, enabling the potential for prosperity to be achieved by those that work for it, while the bad guys are, and have been, taking advantage of the current corrupt monetary and financial system to enrich themselves at the expense of everyone else. Hello, Bix, and welcome to the Time Monk Radio Roundtable.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited about today's interview.
Terrific. We're very happy to have you back again. The Time Monk Radio Network administrator and executive producer is Fox. Today's program producer director and technical support for this show are being coordinated by TRM and member Gemini 1111. Several members of the forum were kind enough to join us for this discussion. They include members Alan, Romans 8:28 is true, also known as Romans, and NAD. For listeners to this interview, we are assuming you have a fairly good understanding of Bix's work, the Road to Ruta theory, and the premises that underlie his thinking. Again, his website is roadtoruta.com. This interview will be available on YouTube for free at the Time Monk Radio channel and at the website webbotforum.com. Are you ready to begin, Bix?
Let's go.
Terrific. Today's roundtable discussion questions have been broken into a number of different topic areas, the first of which is market events. And the first question on this topic area is presented by Romans. Romans?
Hi, Bix. It's a pleasure to talk with you again. I have a combination question here that was both on my mind and another forum member, Blank and B. And the question is, what future fallout do you anticipate related to MF Global situation? And also, in your opinion, what do you believe the ramifications of the whole fiasco will have on the silver market?
That's a big question, and it's the hot topic right now as far as the behind the scenes battle for basically a return to a gold and silver standard. What happened at MF Global, the first thing you need to understand, it's MF Global is one of, if not the largest brokerage for commodities, mainly dealing in on the COMEX, but also at the LME in London. And for a U.S. or any unbacked currency to survive, you have to control all commodities, and that's been true over the centuries, because the moment you remove a backing from a currency, for example, the U.S., when the U.S. went off the pseudo gold standard we have in 71, the moment you move off that, people are going to flock into commodities. So what my theory is, and what I've shown and proven, I believe, is that in the early 1970s, the Federal Reserve, along with Alan Greenspan and a guy named John Kimony, introduced computer trading programs to rig the commodity markets. And that was solely in order to control the unbacked fiat monetary system and have it last as long as it's lasted. So having the largest commodity brokerage firm go down in a pile almost instantaneously is a gigantic deal on every level. Now, the MF Global situation is interesting because of the connections of John Corzine, because of how they went down. They went down not because of their European bets went bad. That's the story that's given to the public. The Fed and the Treasury and the banks could have covered that up easily. It's not about $2 or $3 billion. It's much bigger. And what it's doing is, first of all, it's JP Morgan is the bank that took them down. They pulled their credit line. They slowed down their trades during a couple trading days. They've basically put a lien on, or tried to put a lien on all their assets and all their customer assets. This is solely a JP Morgan instigated event. Now, the question comes down to, was JP Morgan doing this for their own benefit to cover their shorts, or what was JP Morgan's motivation? Or, as I've come to discover a little while down the line, now that we're this far down, were they told and directed to do it by the good guys, by the people at the U.S. Treasury and the people at the Fed in the U.S., I believe directed them to take down MF Global. You can tell by all the delays that are happening, all the regulators that are dropping the ball. This is purely an event to destabilize the market. And I made a list of 6 things that are basically the end result of this MF Global collapse. And the first one is you're going to have even more regulations in the market, which is not what the bankers want. 2, you're going to have a loss of trust in the CME and at other exchanges and in London. 3, you're going to have people moving out of silver contracts and gold contracts and into physical. We're already seeing that. As a matter of fact, my own coin dealer in the area had $60,000 tied up with MF Global. He's gotten some of it back, but not even close to all of it. And he said there's no way he's going back into hedge his inventories in futures and options. He's going to use all that money and stick it into inventory. So it's just more examples of people taking money out of the paper games and moving it into the real stuff, the real physical gold and real physical silver. And then 4 is a loss of trust in the legal and bankruptcy system. This bankruptcy proceeding is an absolute joke and being run by people. The trustee and the bankruptcy court and JP Morgan have full control, and the 150,000 accounts that are frozen at MF Global have no say in the whole matter. It is all being done the way they want to be done, and it is delaying any kind of refund, or the biggest thing is delaying getting contracts back that people were supposedly bought on the long side, and then they're giving them back. In the case of Gerald Salente, he had, I think, gold contracts in the $1,400 range for December delivery, and they're transferring it to another brokerage house at today's market price of 17 something. So all that fraud is going on. There's a loss of trust in all the guarantees. The CME was supposed to guarantee all MF Global trades, and that's why all these exchanges are going public now. They used to be owned by the board members, by the traders themselves. They're all going public because they know the end game is near, and that end game is to default on everything. And then the last, there's also the SIPC, which is a private insurance for stocks and securities and things like that. They don't even have any money, much less can guarantee the trillions upon trillions of dollars in value of stocks and things they guarantee. And then the last thing is the visibility factor, the visibility of corruption at the very heart of the commodity markets. The whole world knows now. And as Bill Murphy says over at GATA, the bad guys can't stand the light of day. Once it's shown in the open what's going on, everybody's going to rush into physical, get out of all their paper contracts, which we're seeing now. And there was a very interesting announcement today or Friday that HSBC is suing MF Global for contracts that for gold contracts and silver contracts that they don't know who the owner is. There are 8 or 9 claims on it, very same gold and very same silver. So the whole MF Global ramifications are going to be gigantic, and they are gigantic already. And you're seeing people starting to panic. We're very close to that rich riots attack on the warehouses of gold and silver that Cliff Hyde talked about all these years. I think we're seeing it now, and between now and sometime within the first quarter, we're going to see basically the stopping of trade on the COMEX and everybody chasing after gold and silver bars that they thought they had in inventory. So it is a huge deal. It is being directed by the good guys, I believe, to completely destroy all trust in our financial markets, which is part of the plan. Part of the plan is to destroy all markets and return to a gold standard with a more fair playing field. So that's kind of a long answer to an easy question.
Well, that's okay. I appreciate that, and I agree with you that the light of day is sure starting to shine on this. And I don't think it's going to take as long as people think to for people to catch on. You've kind of already addressed a little bit of this next question, but I'll go ahead and give it to you anyway. What event or events do you believe will bring on an end to the fraud and deception that the silver market is now showing that is so obvious? Do you think it'll be the Hong Kong Metals Exchange opening, or this MF Global thing, or something else?
The Hong Kong Metal Exchange, I think it's a non-factor because all the exchanges are in on the game. So any large exchange that opens, even in China or wherever it is going to be in on the game. The game can be ended in a blink of an eye by anyone with $5 or $6 billion, which is nothing, and that would be to take delivery of every ounce of silver that you can get your hands on. Now that it's easier said than done because they will change the rules. The COMEX will start changing the rules so that you can't pull out physical metal. All these rules will change as they get deeper and deeper in trouble. But the silver manipulation will end the same time that all market manipulation ends. And it's been going on since the early 70s. So this is a big deal when it happens. But you can't let silver trade freely and at the same time have other markets be rigged, because silver will jump to $1,000 an ounce in a blink of an eye if it is allowed to trade freely, and it will stop being available. The physical side of the market is very tight right now, and the moment you stop the manipulation, and this is partly why the CFTC isn't coming down on JP Morgan, the moment you stop it, it's game over for almost every commodity, which runs over into every form of money, including the derivative market, which is imploding as we speak.
Well, I agree. I can see your point there. Sure appreciate those answers, Bix.
No problem.
The third and final question in this section is going to be presented to you, Bix, by Alan. Alan?
Thank you. And Bix, it's a pleasure and an honor to speak with you.
Thank you.
At present, the ECB, the European Central Bank, appears to be very insolvent on a market-to-market basis of its very underwater sovereign notes and the bond holdings. Do you have any thoughts on when the gold market might finally wake up and react to the situation?
Well, from the gold market side, the gold market is under control of the computer program. So whether or not, it tends to be the worse things get, the more they have to control gold. So it's kind of a reverse indicator. But what's going on in Europe is it's a gigantic deal. What they talk about in the news is just a tiny, tiny part of it. All these bailouts are bailouts for banks. They're not sovereign bailouts. They're bailing out the bondholders, and the bondholders are usually the banks. A very interesting thing happened a few months back when they bailed out Greece and only partially paid back the bondholders. And then the derivative, I think it's a board of derivative holders, mainly the banks, said this doesn't count as a default under the credit default swap arrangement, which was completely against every rule they have on credit default swaps. And part of the reason why MF Global went down was that they were highly leveraged, I think 37-1. They were buying all these bonds, but they were also buying credit default swaps from banks like JP Morgan, so that if they did go down, if their investment wasn't as strong as possible, they could always rely on the credit default swaps. So what happened was you had a partial default by Greece, and then the bankers decided that nobody can cash in their credit default swaps, and it's not deemed a default. And that's what brought down, originally the MF Global complex was the investments weren't bad because he had hedged them with credit default swaps. The problem is the counterparties on the credit default swaps couldn't have covered the losses. So as Europe goes, Europe will probably go first, at least the euro. All it takes is one country to stand back and say, hey, I'm done with this. I'm not giving up the sovereignty of my nation for a bunch of bankers who want to take over the continent. We're going to default on our debt. We don't care who offers us a bailout. We're going to close our borders and we're going to take care of our own people. That type of stuff is going to happen. And the moment that happens, you've got maybe 2 or 3 weeks before the whole thing implodes, including all the global unbacked currencies.
Thank you very much. That was helpful.
Sure.
Yes, indeed. 2 to 3 weeks. A very short time period once things start to blow. For our next topic area, we'll turn to and begin to cover the players. And again, for our first 2 questions, we'll turn to Romans. Romans?
Okay, Bix, and you just kind of briefly just touched on this. Based on a recent email update from you, can you give us your latest take on the state of affairs and where it stands with regard to the silver derivative situation with JP Morgan, and whether their huge short position still exists and how that will affect the timing of future moves in the silver price?
Sure. As far as I can tell, the latest bank participation report came out from the CFTC. And it showed pretty much no change in the position of the large short position. Now, the large short position has gone from 40,000 contracts, which is 200 million ounces 2 years ago, and is down now to around 16,000 contracts. And that number, if there's 4 or more banks that hold that short position, then they have to write the number down on the report. If it's less than 4, they remove the number entirely. So it can be up to 3 banks holding this 15,000 or 16,000 contract short position, which is very interesting because according to the new position limits rule that is still delayed, but we're getting there. According to that rule, right now with the structure of the market, it's about 5,000-6,000 contracts that could be held short and still be within that rule. So if you have 3 banks holding 5,000 or 6,000 contracts each, they are beneath that level. And I think Bart Chilton a while back said that JP Morgan was already back on sides, so to speak. So the position limit rule will not crush the banks now, and that's kind of why they've been delaying it. But what it will do, it limits the amount of manipulation going forward. So yes, I believe JP Morgan and the bankers, and it's not just JP Morgan, against all the silver holders. The silver short has been passed around started Drexel Burnham, and then it went to AIG, and then it went to Bear Stearns. All these companies went down, by the way, and now it presides at JP Morgan, and theoretically they've hedged enough and have enough legitimate exempt silver shorts that I believe they're within the levels of the coming position limits rule. But that's kind of where it is. The key is not, when they implement the position limit rule, the key is not having that take down the banks. The key is that from that point on, they can't build their short position past that 5,000 or 6,000 contract rule. So that's the interesting part. As far as the investigations into JP Morgan, they're still ongoing. They're not ongoing. They already decided that there's massive evidence, and this was years ago. They're just delaying and delaying and delaying because they know once they raise the red flag and say JP Morgan has been busted for rigging the silver market, you've got lawsuits up the yin-yang. You've got people rushing into silver. You've got all the silver bugs in the world jumping up and down saying, I told you so, I told you so. You've got regulators who will be shown for the farce that they are. So it's a big deal. It's going to happen, but I think the charges against JP Morgan won't happen until everything else starts to blow up.
Okay, well, I got to tell you, Bix, it sure appears to me and many others that the CFTC is purposely dragging their feet on imposing any serious fact finding or discipline in the silver futures trading market. How can these guys be viewed as having any credibility on what they say at all?
Well, when you study the CFTC, and this version of the CFTC was put in place in the early 70s, right when the computer rigging started, and it was put in place to run cover for the computer riggers. There has been no, the joke of the industry on the legal side has always been the worst lawyers were at the went to the CFTC because you had a couple people controlling the whole thing, and then you had a bunch of lousy lawyers and lousy commissioners and things like that who either aren't smart enough to figure it out or are in on the game, and they run cover. They'll take down who they want, and they'll leave the big guys to control the markets, because you must control the commodity markets to have an unbacked fiat currency. And this was proven in a letter that one of the CFTC judges, when he was about to retire, this guy Judge Levine or Judge Painter, in his retirement letter said that the other CFTC judge, Judge Levine, promised Wendy Graham, who was the CFTC chairman back in the 90s, he promised her he would never find anybody guilty of manipulation on the plaintiff side. That is a huge revelation that came out about a year ago. And for a judge, and there's only two judges at the CFTC, for one of the judges to say, hey, the game's been rigged all along, is just a gigantic red flag. And it's an endorsement of the road to Ruta theory, that they're doing this all on purpose, and the SEC and the CFTC are put in place to run cover for the manipulation crowd.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Bix. I know there's a whole lot of people out there that are really anxious for justice to prevail here.
I'm one of them.
Me too.
Good. Yeah, I know we'd all like to see it coming in, which kind of leads me to my next question, Bix. This is McLaren. The CFTC, in recent testimony before Congress and in statements regarding their enforcement efforts, have deferred to the SEC's calendar regarding the definition of swaps. If the CFTC can't move until the SEC does, doesn't that provide the bad guys with a continuing upper hand as the banks and market riggers exert huge influence over that body of so-called regulators?
Yes, basically flat out yes. The SEC, if you compare the two organizations, the SEC is 10 times as big as the CFTC, has huge markets to oversee, and is also 10 times more corrupt. The SEC oversees a system where people buy and sell stocks, bonds, pretty much everything except commodities. They oversee it all, and they are completely in the hands and the pockets of the big banks. So if it's in the big banks' interest to delay, they will. And this is what's happening with the definition of swaps. Now, the key is, though, that the SEC is being taken out. They're being taken down and shown for the fraud that they are by the good guys. And it's the CFTC that has really the pull now, because they got enough commissioners on the CFTC to take down this whole system when it is time. And this delay with defining the word swap is, it's ridiculous, because they've been regulating the swaps market for countless decades, and now they're just trying to define it. It is clearly a delay tactic, but they're not going to delay it for that much longer. Right now, it looks like they're going to get the definition in mid-January is what Gary Gensler is his latest estimate. And then the position limits will be implemented in March, mid-March. And if you listen to Cliff High, that's about the same time that it's going to get really squirrely in the market. So that all makes sense. And in the end, the bad element at the SEC will be removed. And I believe most, if not all, of the bad element at the CFTC has already been removed. So we're getting there. We're just not there yet.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for providing us a little bit of perspective with regard to when we might expect things to happen. Kind of shifting gears here a little bit. In the last interview, you pointed out that with White House Chief of Staff Bill Daley, Jamie Dimon's right-hand guy, who is now seated next to Obama on a daily basis, if the debt ceiling is not raised or if QE3 or other measures were not established, that dire consequences would result. And that given those circumstances, that now, at that time, is the opportune time for the good guys to put a stake through the heart of the vampire bankers. To me, at least, it appeared that the good guys didn't take advantage of that opportunity. What, if anything, has happened that would support that view of yours, and do you still hold it? And what is the chance for a stake to be driven through the space where a banker's heart should be?
Do bankers have hearts?
I'm
No.
not really sure. I think it's a big void.
No, I do believe that the good guys have stuck a few daggers in the hearts of the bankers, and let me tell you why. Back when we talked last, I think it was June of this year, everybody was still talking about green shoots and how we're in a recovery and all that. And the things that have gone down since then, you know, the first big one was probably the downgrade of the U.S. debt, which is like huge behind the scenes. And all this goes on behind the scenes because there's the derivative market is just gigantic, and you're starting to see kind of the flailing of the markets. And of the second thing and the biggest thing is the takedown of MF Global. That has the potential to destroy all unbacked fiat currencies. When people lose faith in the markets, you're going to see people trying to get out, and these banks are leveraged 30, 40, 50 to 1. And as people, it's great when the price of assets are going up, but when people pull back and the price of assets start going down, they have to sell more and more and more of their assets to just maintain their base tier 1 capital. So those two things are happening. Europe is imploding, and that's all part of it too. So I do think there are stakes being stabbed in the heart of the bad guys. The mistake the good guys made in 2008 was when they last tried to take down the system, was that they thought that killing Lehman would make everything implode. Just one stab to the heart and everything is gone, and it almost did. What they're doing now is a little more drawn out, but they're driving stake after stake after stake into the heart of these banksters. So the banksters are getting staked, shall we say. It's just going to be dragged out for longer than it took before in order to take them out fully and completely, which is what has to happen.
Yeah. I guess they forgot that they needed a silver spike in order to take down the Federal Reserve. But
well, they can. I mean, that truly is the silver spike. You know, driving silver to $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 an ounce would destroy the entire derivative complex, because JP Morgan owns most of those derivatives, and if they go, everybody goes.
Yeah, well, let's hope that the silver spike will take down the Fed, and then we can move on to something that's of more sound and stable basis. The next question for you, Bix, is going to come from Alan, and it's on behalf of forum member Plain.
Well, yes, good to be back again, Bix. It seems that we're talking here about some kind of high cabal, to use Churchill's phrase, that are in charge, or at least exerting a lot of influence upon the banking system. And they're closely associated with the so-called military-industrial complex. But do you really think that they're going to let the current system come tumbling down? They may even be nastier, and opposed to bringing in something that many of us could accept, which would be a free market system based on a gold standard, they might have something much nastier in mind, similar to Nazi Germany. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, and I've spoken about it a few times. You know, I'm not in the know of what's going on behind the scenes in that area. I defer to people like Ben Fulford on the more conspiratorial side, who has contacts within the CIA and all that. And it does seem that the iron grip that the bad guys had on all the military divisions of the United States has been pried away, and there's only a few people still holding on, but they see the end coming because the world is waking up to what has been going on for these last 100 years or so. So I do see, I see both sides wanting to crash the system, though. And the question is going to become what's going to happen after the crash. Can we pick up our trousers and say, hey, we don't want any more bad guy bankers controlling our lives. Go away. We are going to back to our Constitution. Ron Paul, who's gaining in the polls already, and I've long said that the good guys are going to put Ron Paul as our next president. Ron Paul is ready and able and has the perfect concept to restart our system after the crash. So his election is going to be part of the timing of all this chaos. So expect massive chaos between now and, say, right before the GOP nomination becomes official, because the more chaos and more banking crashes there are, and if hyperinflation kicks in, you're going to see Ron Paul, the only one up on that stage, saying, I told you so, and here's the fix. So they are being taken out, but a lot of that's behind the scenes, and I don't have contacts or good vision on what happens other than the things I hear from the white hats and from Ben Fulford and people like that.
Okay, well, you never know how things are going to shape up, do we? Here's something that's a little bit different, and let's kind of get into the root of what it is that's going on at Road to Ruta, especially in regard to the players, Bix. Have you reassessed your perceived role about any of the key players, good guys that have turned out to be bad guys, and inversely bad guys that are now turning out to be good guys?
I haven't. And as a matter of fact, the longer this goes on, the more apparent it becomes that the good guys are good guys and the bad guys are bad guys. For example, for years people were saying Paul Volcker was a bad guy because he ran the Fed and he worked for the Rothschilds but the information I've analyzed and the things, and this is before the Volcker rule was even mentioned, I identified him as a good guy long before that, and it came out all of a sudden that the banks hate him. They know this Volcker rule will destroy the market manipulation that they have their clutches in. So that just recently we had Nancy Pelosi and Barney Frank coming out attacking Newt Gingrich as he was climbing in the polls. If you think about it strategically, if you're a Democrat, you would want to run against Newt. He epitomizes the worst in Washington. He's got more dirt in his closet than you can even imagine, and dead skeletons, and you name it. That guy is knee deep in the bad guy stuff. But Pelosi and Frank came out very early, right away, and said, I'm gonna open the door and tell everybody your dirty secrets. If they really wanted to win the election, they would have done that after he was put in as the Republican candidate. They wouldn't come out right now because all that did is, and all that's doing is helping Ron Paul. So the good guys and on the Democratic side are even coming out to assist in this Ron Paul for president type of setup.
Okay, that's really nice. You actually kind of covered some of our next question there, Bix, which was, can you name some of the good guys and some of the bad guys? Are there any others that you'd care to toss out there for us? Bad guys in particular, so that we can focus our ire?
Well, the bad guys are, it's all the normal ones you hear about, the Rothschilds and the Bushes and the Clintons, and Obama's controlled by the bad guys, and Brzezinski and all those guys. The good guys, from the Road to Ruta analysis, you've got Greenspan, you've got Ron Paul, Nancy Pelosi, Barney Frank, Paul Volcker, Michael Mukasey, Ronald Reagan, Arthur Burns, the old Fed chairman. And then there's the more obscure guys who are directly from my original analysis, a guy named Stephen Duveau, who was put on charge of the computer programs very early on in the 70s. And Harold J. Sullivan, who was a guy who wrote Civil Rights and Liberties, and there's an Assistant Attorney General award called the Harold J. Sullivan Award, and all these guys are way in the background. And then George Goodwin Jr., who wrote this book called Little Legislatures, about the power and autonomy of subcommittees in Congress, because all this stuff on the road to Ruta, the stuff I talk about, had to be done in secret. Otherwise, the bad guys would have taken them out. Like they took out Kennedy. They tried to kill Reagan as soon as he got elected. So it all had to be done in secret. But now that they're out in the open, and this whole road to Ruta game is being understood and being accepted even. A few years back, I was considered a crazy gold bug who's lost his rocker, even by my friends at GATA. But now they're all coming around saying, oh my God, this is what really happened. This is where we are, and this is what's going to happen.
Oh my goodness. So you're actually the wizard behind the curtain in The Wizard of Oz, or at least maybe you're Dorothy asking the question.
I would say I'm Toto when Toto went and pulled the curtain back.
I like it. I like it. We are speaking with Bix Weir. You can help to support him by visiting his website at roadtoruta.com. May the road you choose be the right road. Our next topic area will directly address gold and silver. And on this subject, the first question will be from forum member RTG and will be asked by Nad. Nad?
Yes. Hello, Bix. It's really nice to talk to you. I know you've been very busy and appreciate your taking this time with us. While there has been increasing talk that the race is on among central bankers to get their hands on the last remaining available supplies of gold bullion, I don't think you ever know it from the way gold is trading. Do you have any thoughts on when gold once again starts to trade with the traditional safe haven status that it usually exhibits?
Well, again, gold and silver are traded and controlled on computer programs, but to the whole concept of gold as a safe haven is interesting, because prior to 1971, gold was used as money. So if you called money a safe haven, I can get my head around that. Gold has always been the go-to money when all these attempts at fiat money fail. But as a safe haven status, it's more theoretical, because since the early 70s, when gold has been rigged by computer, it's usually in times of turmoil that gold is suppressed the hardest. So it really hasn't been a safe haven in a traditional sense. It's more theoretical. It has always been the safe haven when unbacked fiat money collapses. So it will be a safe haven at the end, but until we get there, the bankers will control the price. And as long as you own physical metal, gold and silver, and it's outside of their reach, meaning you store your own gold and silver within your own, understanding of where you have it, whether it's at. I tell people not to store it in a safe deposit box, because the bankers have the key to that. So take a lot of time to figure out where you want to store it, but keep it out of their clutches. We're seeing that right now with the MF Global bankruptcy. HSBC has sued MF Global because apparently some of the gold and silver that they were holding in the GLD ETF has 8 claims on it by other people. That's something that we talked about all along, but now it's physically being proven with this bankruptcy. So, gold is a philosophical safe haven, but on a day-to-day trading basis, they still control the price. And if war breaks out, I'm sure they'll slam gold again.
Oh, okay, thank you. But now, I have another question here from RTG. And it's what we've gone over before, the fraud and deception. in the silver market is not likely to end until the physical offtake is so great that the bullion banks give up for fear of actually losing their physical, which we know they cherish. Okay, Silver Eagle sales have grown to the point where they now almost equal U.S. mine output. Eric Sprott seems to be threatening to clean out the COMEX warehouse. And do you see this as part of an end game, and do you have any likely timing scenarios?
I think the timing is always difficult, and the timing of the end of silver manipulation will most likely, it will, if silver manipulation ended tomorrow, then the entire global monetary complex would implode tomorrow. There might be an implosion of Europe, and then silver takes off. It all depends on when derivative silver is banned, and that's silver at the COMEX and the LME. Those are all fake derivative complex derivatives trading back and forth. There's 100 billion ounces of silver, paper silver, that will trade on the COMEX this year. 100 billion ounces of paper silver. That is what creates a price on that market. It's got nothing to do with the, 30 or 40 million ounces that are in inventory. It's the 100 billion ounces that trade on paper back and forth with computers from bank to bank to set the price. As far as Silver Eagles, there's a very interesting misunderstanding about gold and Silver Eagles. According to law, Silver Eagles have to be minted in the quantity demanded. Now, it's different with gold. Gold has to be sourced from U.S. mines, so they have to sell gold Eagles up until the amount mined in the U.S. in gold. But with Eagles, it's different. They changed that law so it will give the good guys a chance to destroy the bad guys with just buying Silver Eagles. There is no limitation on the amount of Silver Eagles that you can buy, and they have to give you. Now, of course, the more you buy, the more they make. They might have slowdowns in production, but if you go in there and say, I want 1 billion ounces of silver, they are required by law to sell you 1 billion ounces of silver. That is the law. Do they uphold the law? No, they don't. They claim there's all sorts of technological problems, and we have to expand our production. But if they stuck to the law, which they are required to do theoretically, they have to mint as many as are demanded, and that's not constricted by the amount of silver mined in the U.S. That is a global supply for minting Silver Eagles. So Silver Eagles, if Eric Sprott went in and started a Silver Eagle fund where he put a couple $100 million into purchasing Eagles, he would be assured of getting his Eagles, not like his past fund that they took 3 months to get him the medal. So it's interesting. The Silver Eagle angle, the good guys have set it up such that legally in the United States, no matter what the price is, the U.S. Mint has to sell Silver Eagles in the quantity demanded.
That's interesting. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Yeah, it really is. Be very interested to find out where they're going to get all that additional silver, maybe from Mexico and some other places around the world. That's a question that'll have to.
I think it's a question of, it's not a question of the quantity of metal available. It's a question of price. With silver prices depressed so low, you're going to have more and more demand. So the free market is not working when we're talking about sourcing Silver Eagles. There's plenty of metal available. By definition, in a free market, they'll just have to pay more for that silver. So it kind of gets into everybody's saying there's not enough silver. There is enough silver. There's not enough silver at $32 an ounce, though.
Okay. Yep. No, you're absolutely right about that. And let's shift over to Alan, who will have another question on behalf of Pref One Idiot. And Alan?
Yes, this question is actually somewhat related, Bix, to what you were just talking about. I can attest to the fact that we have monster boxes of silver that, especially coins that are available from dealers here in the United States. I bought some myself. But it seems that there are some dealers in other nations that are reporting problems in obtaining silver for their retail monetary bullion customers. And how far are we seeing the shortage of physical silver at this point, and how do you see that developing in the future?
Things are tight now, but it's funny. The way the silver market, the retail silver market tends to work is the higher the price of silver and the more attention that is focused on silver, the more people come in to buy. So when we had the buildup from $25 to $50, which was orchestrated by Bill Daley and sitting next to Obama. But as it went up, more and more people got in. And at $50, everybody keeps getting in because the excitement is there. Then they slam it, and all of a sudden, the retail market kind of fades. So it's kind of the opposite. The retail market tends to do the opposite of what's going on with the price. You know, if the retail buyers were smart, they'd be loading up right now. And then,
yes.
If they're trading, they, sell some at 50 and wait for the next slam, or sell some at 75 or 100 and wait for the next slam. I don't do that. I'm not a trader. But the dynamics of, and you can see this in the reported sales of silver eagles from the U.S. Mint, because they report weekly on how much they're selling. And it's really interesting. As the price goes higher, people buy more. The price goes down, people buy less. It's kind of, people aren't great traders when it comes to buying silver.
It's very silly. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about recycled silver that could be used in industrial applications, and how long do you think it might take for silver's price to reflect salvage costs?
Silver recycling is it's an interesting topic, because depending on which application the silver is being used in will depend on whether or not it's feasible to recycle. Film, for example, it's obviously easy to recycle, and that a lot of that is done. Cell phones, such little amounts, maybe 1/100th of an ounce is used in a cell phone, so it doesn't make sense to do that.
Right.
So, it all depends on what application. But what I do see is as the price of silver gets to be, a true fair market value, say $800, $900, as it goes up in that range, what we're going to see is less of the disposable kind of silver, less electronics being made and thrown away, less, because right now you can get almost anything made in China and it's got a little silver in it, and you use it for 6 months and you throw it away because the next new model comes up. As the price of silver goes to, say, $1,000 an ounce, you're going to be seeing people holding on to these items longer because it'll be more, a little more expensive to make. But as far as recycling silver, there's going to be a strange dynamic when we go back to a gold and silver standard, because so much of our silver now that is mined today is used in industrial applications, and some of them will go away because that silver has a more important purpose in the monetary system. But some of it, a lot of it will, because it's used in such small amounts, will stay in the industrial applications. And as money, silver can never be more valuable as money than it is in the industrial applications. Otherwise, people would just melt the silver money and use it in the industrial application. So it will be a really interesting thing to keep an eye on, the recycling factors. Right now, pretty much only the photo processing silver is recycled, and everything else is thrown in the waste dumps.
Very interesting, and thank you very much.
Sure.
For our last two questions in this section, we're going to flip things back over to Nad, who's again going to be offering the questions on behalf of Profidiate. Nad?
Okay, first of all, Chris Martenson recently stated that many natural resources, including silver, are entering the exponential drop-off stage of depletion. And like many of us, he believes that silver can eclipse gold in value. What's your take on future possible gold-silver price ratios?
Well, first of all, I had a couple of subscribers ask me to watch Chris Martenson's. He published it was a talk he gave about depleting natural resources, and I had a fundamental problem with his analysis, and here was my problem. He's a really smart guy, and he knows his stuff, but he refuses to use any data that he can't verify. So he tends to look at the published kind of mainstream data when it comes to natural resources and what's in the ground and what's above ground and things like that. And I think that's to his detriment. Other analysts do that also. If you don't take into account the manipulation, the fraud, the cover-ups, you're going to come out with an answer that is correct as far as the data is concerned, but is 100% wrong as far as what is available. Gold is a great example. If you use his numbers when it comes to gold, he uses the published numbers. The gold that is in the ground in the United States, for 100 years, the U.S. policy has been hide everything you have in the ground and use everybody else's first while they're accepting fiat money. And then when the whole thing crashes, we'll open our gold mines. There's oil all over the place in the United States. The Gull Island oil field is the largest field in the world by far. That's up in Alaska. It was discovered in the 60s, and it was capped. We don't want to touch it. We're not going to touch it until nobody takes fiat money anymore. As far as gold, the two largest gold mines in the world, by far, possibly millions of tons. One is in the Grand Canyon that was discovered in the really early 1900s, and it's a big part of what runs our fiat money system now. Had they used that gold that they found back then and brought that into circulation, remember gold was money back then, they would have devalued the currency by billions way back when there wasn't all that much gold floating around. Then the other gigantic gold mine is in Chocolate Mountain in California, and Dianne Feinstein has been instrumental in putting that into the National Desert Wildlife Preserve. Basically, that gold in Chocolate Mountain, it's right next to a military base, and it would triple or quadruple the amount of total gold in the world. So in the United States and around the world, countries, the very large finds, they'll put a little flag on it, put it around a military base and say, we will use this. We're just not going to use it right now. So when Chris Martenson comes out and says, well, we're running out of all this stuff, he doesn't bend far enough to say there is fraud and manipulation going on when it comes to how much natural resources everybody has.
Okay.
And I think that the other part of that question was the gold and silver ratio. Right now, at whatever it is, 53-1 or whatever it is, it's ridiculous. I think the ratio will, at some point, it'll hit 1-1 because there's 5 times more gold in the world above ground gold in the world than there is silver. There's a lot more silver in the ground, so it'll take a while to come back. But I think a ratio of 5 or 10-1 is what it'll settle out as.
Okay. You're a silver bug, and I have sort of a loaded question. Are there any reasons worth mentioning not to buy silver?
There's only one that I know of, and that is silver may become so important and so valuable that the government might move all out to nationalize silver, confiscate silver, restrict the buying and selling of silver. It is such an important part of the whole complex that's the only reason not to buy, is that it may be too important.
Interesting. I thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Bix, our next set of questions didn't really quite neatly fit into clean categories, so pardon us if these come across as a little bit scattered. The first of these questions is going to come from Romans. Romans?
Hi, Bix. This question is from another one of our forum members. Chinese Vice Premier Wang Qishan, I think I pronounced that close, mentioned the world, will be in a severe economic downturn. They, or other Asians, reportedly have been buying up silver. Would you expect the pace of buying of silver to moderate?
No, I don't expect it to moderate. Knowing that the Chinese have been working closely with the good guys, Alan Greenspan especially, for years, decades even, in the road to Ruta theory. They have been buying up probably 2,000 tons of gold every year consistently for 20 years. Of course, they don't report it, but the Chinese are on board with the road to Ruta theory. They have actually been threatening the bad guys in the U.S. and around the world that they need to stand down. So the industrial demand aspect of what the Chinese buy in silver is just a tiny part of what's going on in the silver market. At any moment, China can buy all the silver in the world and end this game in a blink of an eye. What they are doing right now, and what they have been doing, is using this time to build their manufacturing base. Everybody thinks that the Chinese will, when we destroy the dollar, the Chinese will be the worst hurt, but that's actually not true. Although they hold a lot of the dollar debt, they have been building their infrastructure. We have been building China's infrastructure. When the crash happens and we default on the dollar, which will happen, China will just nationalize all the U.S. and foreign manufacturing plants there and call it even. So China's in on the game, and they will probably sell all their U.S. dollars when they are asked to by the good guys. So they're in on it. And Wen Jiabao, their premier, is a geologist and used to work in the gold mines, and his wife is a gold expert. So they know exactly what's going on.
Okay, thanks, Bix.
Our next question, also having to do with China, is going to come from member Alan. Alan?
Yes, hi again, Bix. Buying gold and silver will back the Chinese currency, making it stronger in relationship to the dollar. Do you think it's a prudent move to be taking in an economic downturn? Trade items would cost more to sell. Possibly commodities would be less expensive to buy. It could possibly be very good for the bankers in the United States, who now could open Asian sweat-style shops. So do you think that's good?
No, I don't see. Well, currently, the amount of gold held by a country does not influence the value of their currency. And those who say, it's all about the gold that a country has, will strengthen their currency. It's not true at the moment. Now, if we switch to a pseudo gold standard, where currencies are valued according to gold held by the treasuries, that might be a different deal. The value of currencies right now is determined by computer programs run out of the Fed in New York and the Treasury. So, they're rigged just as much as the gold and silver markets. If a country were to actually back their currency in a pseudo gold standard, it would be backed but not redeemable. And that really has shown not to work either. the only real gold standard that is possible in long term is a coin standard, having all currency redeemable in gold or silver coin. And so partial backing won't work. And I don't see China will go to a gold and silver standard when everybody else does. One country can't do it alone if it's redeemable, because everybody would redeem it and the game would be over. So they will, when the global crash happens, I think every country will change their monetary system to reflect a commodity-based system.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Okay, and at this point, we're going to flip back to Romans for another one.
Okay, Bix, I'm asking this question on behalf of our forum member, Ned. In Africa, I was told that a scale and a calculator were used in many transactions involving silver coins versus the inflated paper. I doubt this will happen in the US. I come from a time when coins were silver, gold was in the $35 range. We knew about PMs, inflation, and made money or lost. There is a lack of awareness about wealth retention by getting away from paper in many people today. How do you educate them? The days of pulling silver dollars out of the bank and selling them down the road are long gone. In the event of a dollar devaluation, we all know PMs will save us. What other steps could you take along with metals?
Well, I think the coming crash of the unbacked fiat monetary system will be a gigantic education for everyone. When people lose their life savings, their jobs, their checking account, their way of life, the lessons that Ron Paul has been preaching all these years will come to the forefront for everyone. Every single person on the planet will feel the ramifications of the destruction of the unbacked fiat monetary system. So the long lost days of pulling gold and silver out of your pocket to use as money are going to be that is our future. And the Fed Boston comics that I've analyzed so thoroughly, it's exactly what they're saying, is that and showing in pictures of people cashing in gold coins at banks. Now this is a publication printed and written by the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston. They are ready to do that. And if you look at the new $100 bill, it's got gold all over it, and they're ready and prepared to go back onto a gold and silver standard when the time comes, and the time is coming very quickly, I believe.
Yeah, I long for those good old days again too. Thanks.
Sure.
Bix, I'm going to throw some more of your famous last words from the last interview back at you.
Good.
In the last interview, you expressed the view that the bad guys are being removed from power in the USA. Yet presently in Europe, the Goldman Sachs gang, as Gerald Celente called them, appear to have solidified a number of roles in Europe, including the head of the ECB, Mario Draghi, and Mario Monti being placed into the leadership role in Italy. Furthermore, Lucas Papademos was in charge of the Greek Central Bank from 1994 until 2002. He also oversaw Goldman's swap deal and is now leading the Greek government. So instead, the Fed, the ECB, and the IMF and the other central bankers have taken steps to increasingly increase global liquidity and to continue to exert control over and in support of the global debt markets. How long can this game of whack-a-mole continue?
Well, it's the very fact that they feel the urgency and the need to do all that shows you that we are crumbling. Behind the scenes of every bank, all the pillars are crumbling down, and they're trying to get their people in charge in order to prolong the system. Now, it's impossible to do, and once the crash happens, those are the people who will be blamed by the 99.9% of us, shall we say, that will blame them for the problems. They will blame them that they're not getting paid anymore, that their checking account has nothing in it because the bank they held it at was insolvent. So they're doing everything they can, but it will be not enough. And that's kind of where we are now. You're seeing all the, even within the United States, they're throwing the Constitution out the window. But once the crash happens, and once all these banksters are exposed for what they are, then they'll be taken out, given truth trials and all that stuff, and we'll learn about our past, how controlled we've been. It's just coming out into the open these days. So, the closer and closer we get to the end game, the more and more these guys will try to, patch things together with tape.
Well, let's hope that the tape finally gives way, because we could certainly stand getting back to a constitutional government and honest money and moving things forward on behalf of the 99.9% of us. And for the next question, Alan has one that will hopefully help that 99.9%. Alan?
Yes, hello again, Bix. And I think a lot of us do see the crash coming that you're talking about, but we don't exactly know what might happen after that, so we're starting to think about bartering. And if people are purchasing silver coins for future barter, do you think that they should also consider some of the smaller denominations like dimes and quarters?
Yes, definitely. I like the pre-1965 coins because they're a good value for the silver content, and they're easily recognizable. They should be good for barter if it does get to a barter type situation. Now, I don't know if it will, but the smaller coins, I try to stay away from the larger bars, just mainly because of the potential for counterfeiting, basically putting tungsten in the gold bars and molybdenum in the silver bars. It's harder to do on a coin basis. You can easily weigh a coin when you buy it. So I tend to stick to coins because, right now with a silver coin and a silver bar, if you think about when you go cash in coins of gold and silver, I do it on occasion. I hate doing it, but got to pay the bills sometimes. You get very little pushback or analysis from the coin dealer who's buying it on whether or not that's a real coin. On the bar, on silver bars as well, it's hard for them, first of all, to determine whether or not a bar is filled with lead or whatever it's filled with. But as the price of silver, say, goes to $1,000 an ounce, you're talking $100,000 for a bar of silver. They're going to put a lot more time and effort into determining whether that's pure silver or not. So if you stick with the smaller coins, they're harder to fake, and because they've been so cheap for so long, the value of faking them isn't even there. So yeah, I like U.S. coins along with the U.S. Eagles because they are covered under the currency counterfeiting laws because they are legal tender. Although the value of the metal is more than the value printed on the coin, but the counterfeiting laws are much stronger than the fraud laws. If you fake a bar, that's more along the lines of fraud, not counterfeiting a currency. So I like to stick with U.S. Eagles and the pre-65 coins.
Well, that's great to hear. I've been doing the right thing then. I do have one other question, and this goes back to J.P. Morgan and the manipulations that they and others have done with the silver futures. I'm sure you're aware of what Max Kaiser and some of the others have done in the so-called Silver Liberation Army, which is following the same strategy that you were discussing earlier. Do you think these efforts will ever be successful in actually affecting these banks?
Yes, and I think so on different levels. From my analysis of the Max Kaiser, I think it was called Buy Silver, Kill J.P. Morgan or something to that effect. That drive, I figured that took about 10 million physical ounces off the market, which is good, which is significant. Now, whether or not that affects price is a different subject because 10 million ounces, although it's a lot of silver, when they're trading 1 billion ounces a day on the COMEX in paper silver contracts, they still have control of the price of silver, no matter how much silver you take off the market. But it is important on another level in that it educates people. Many, many people came to the silver story after Max Kaiser started talking about it, Alex Jones started talking about it. Once you understand the silver story, you'll get a better idea of everything that goes on, and you'll be more inclined to switch your gold into silver, because silver is such a better story than gold. Gold's not a bad story, but silver's much, much better.
Oh, yes. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay, Bix, this is McLaren back at you, and I'm going to be asking this next question on behalf of forum member Space. I watched the world's central bankers sell large quantities of gold into the open market from 1996 until 2002. I thought the Bank of England sale of 400 tons at $254 US per ounce was probably the final purchase by the Illuminati, and that the gold and silver charts rather would confirm this. Because prices have gone up ever since, would you elaborate briefly on the following? Post-collapse distribution of gold and silver, i.e., the powers that be have all of the gold, we will have the silver. How do you see this working out?
I've heard it a lot that the Rothschilds and the powers to be have all the gold and have been hoarding it and things like that. I don't fully believe it. And the reason I don't believe it is I know that the U.S. since 71 or 72 has been planning to return to a gold standard. We have been accumulating gold, and secretly, obviously it's not reported anywhere. But at the same time, the gold that the U.S. holds at Fort Knox and the official gold, I think that it has been leased out or loaned out. But it's kind of there's a split between our official gold, which is basically controlled by the banksters, and then there's this secret road to Ruta stash of gold that we've been accumulating for decades. And also all this gold that we have in the ground, that in these secret gold mines that we have not been exploiting, will be opened up and we'll be able to go back onto a gold standard. When the collapse happens and we do return to a gold and silver standard, all globalization will end because no one will trust us because we've defaulted on the dollar. So it will be a domestic gold and silver standard according to the road to Ruta. We won't be trading with other countries either for a while. So we'll just take care of ourselves, bring all our troops home, put them on the borders of our own country. So yes, I think the powers that be have a lot of physical gold, but I don't think it is a problem with the way when the United States goes back to our gold and silver standard.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Bix. We're going to flip it over to Romans, who will be asking 2 questions on behalf of Obi-Wan 1. Romans?
Yes, Bix, this is on behalf of Obi-Wan 1. And I have these same questions myself, by the way. Do you adamantly 100% believe that all paper investments will be worthless? That holding physical is the only scenario in your model that will be safe when the dust settles?
There's a possibility that some kind of a rejiggering of the financial system might be attempted. I think Cliff High has alluded to this as well. I would put it along the lines of the NESRA bill. I'm not sure if people are aware of that. You can find it at nesra.org, and that's the National Economic Stability and Recovery Act. And what that tries to do is take all the debt that's out there, remove all the interest paid on that debt, such that your new balance on that debt is shrunk, or if you paid more interest than the debt was worth, then you own the asset or whatever you have on that debt just free and clear. I don't see that working. And the reason I don't see it working, although it's, there are a lot of people working towards that angle, but the reason I don't see it working is that it won't solve the derivative problem. The derivative problem in the quintillions is the shadow banking world. It won't solve the inequality problem. The inequality of the 0.01% own almost all the wealth on a paper basis of the world. It won't solve a lot of problems that the road to Ruta initially tried to solve. The road to Ruta theory was the manipulation of gold and silver to prolong the unbacked fiat monetary system. And the idea was to build your infrastructure, run the unbacked system as long as possible, soaking up the benefits, and then crash the system. Because as you run the unbacked fiat money system, there have been massive amounts of corruption and money stolen, and so much more beyond you can even believe behind the scenes. The only way to get rid of all that is to get rid of everything. So to get rid of everything, it's not someone who's going to sign a law that says, okay, all fiat money is worthless. It's going to be an organic collapse, probably brought on by the derivative weapon of mass financial destruction, as Warren Buffett loves to call it. And you hopefully everybody's seen that Warren Buffett is now knee deep in that, and I think he himself can fall on the sword and destroy the entire global paper money system. So ultimately, I don't think anything will survive, but I think in the meantime, the powers that be and the U.S. Congress might try to save what's left of our unbacked system, but ultimately I don't think it'll work.
Well, I can understand that point of view. The next question is also from Obi-Wan 1. How do you feel about holding physical metals in a public vault somewhere, or using James Turk's goldmoney.com as a vehicle for holding physical metals?
I get this asked of me a lot, and because James Turk is such a upstanding citizen and a good person, people feel very safe with him. And out of all the ETFs, him and Eric Sprott, I would say those are the two that, if you had to do it, you should hold your metal with. The problem I see is that in my scenario, where the collapse is total and complete, you've got metal not in your hands and not in your possession. It is a prime spot for confiscation and nationalization, depending on where the warehouse is. James Turk and Eric Sprott won't be able to take care of that money or take care of the gold and silver if their employees aren't getting paid, and the transition, they won't have control of it. It will be chaotic, and to have someone else hold your metal in a identifiable large chunk of metal in one spot, it is just a prime target for the nation that it will be on their knees. Every nation will be on their knees, and there'll be so many angry people, angry at the rich. And, that money could represent their rebirth of their nation and using gold and silver as currency. So, if I just, even though those guys are great and upstanding citizens, I don't think they're going to have any control of it either.
Well, I can see that point of view. So it sounds like the moral of the story would be gold, silver, brass, and lead.
Yeah, and food and water and a list of supplies.
Right. Well, thank you, Bix.
Sure.
Okay, Bix, we're going to turn back to Alan now for another question. Alan?
Yes. Hi again, Bix. Do you see the Hong Kong Metal Exchange, the Shanghai Exchange, and the Pan-Asian Gold Exchange taking over for the CME and the LME as the world's paramount bullion exchanges, especially in light of the recent MF Global CME JPM heist?
I wish that that some exchange will be created that is a physical only exchange, meaning no paper contracts, a buy and sell type. You have one buyer and one seller where you can't high frequency trade all day and manipulate the markets. I don't see any exchange that's set up yet, even these new ones, that have just the functionality of determining the fair market value of gold and silver between a willing buyer and a willing seller. I think every other market is set up for traders and hedging and all the derivatives of gold and silver. So I'm looking for a real gold and silver exchange where the price is determined of the real metal and there are no paper derivatives.
Oh, if we could live in such a world. Thank you very much.
I think we will. There will be so much anger when this all implodes, and most of that will be pointed at the derivative complex, the paper contract. So is it a wonderful world? Yeah, but it'll be really different.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, kind of sticking on the Asian theme here for a second, Bix. Do those Asian exchanges, in light of a few of them, are affiliated with the same players, the Rothschilds, et cetera, that manipulate the prices in New York and London, the JPM Red Shield Brigade? Is it really something that can be trusted by Asians as well as other players around the globe?
No, I don't. Well, can be trusted. I think it's good that all these extra exchanges are coming up because there is some kind of physical component to them. But I haven't seen one that is a true physical exchange where there's buyers and sellers of metal taking delivery and not, it's not 10 billion contracts trading back and forth between two computers. So it hasn't happened yet. These new exchanges are, unless it is solely a physical exchange where the only thing to do there is go and buy metal and sell metal and take delivery and it's not just trading back and forth. We're not gonna, I don't trust them.
Okay, and hopefully that there will be something that helps to restructure it. I mean, getting to a world where you've got your local neighborhood or regional metals exchange with the dealers all calling each other up and down the West Coast or through the Corn Belt, up and down the East Coast, moving out over into other areas without larger exchanges. How does a global pricing mechanism get set in this future world that you foresee, Bix?
Well, it's not. See, when we talk about a pricing mechanism, we're talking about pricing a commodity in terms of an unbacked fiat money. The problem is the unbacked fiat money. The problem is not the commodity. So, in the future world that I see, gold and silver will be used as money, at least in the United States for sure, and plans are in place to do that. But it is a different mindset. What will be the value of an ounce of gold when an ounce of gold is a monetary unit of the United States? It would be the declared value. Would it be $20? $20 in U.S. gold? The mindset needs to be changed to think outside of the unbacked fiat money system and go back to, if you erase all money from the face of the earth, all unbacked fiat money with a derivative crash, then any new money introduced will be very valuable on a dollar for dollar basis. So it's complicated when you think of using gold and silver as money, because at that point in time, everything else will be based off the currency in use. So you won't think of, a house costs $500,000. You'll think of a house costs 80 ounces of silver or, 40 ounces of gold or whatever, that valuation is. It really is a different mindset.
Yes and no. It still goes back to a value associated with it, however that happens to be determined or set. And I wasn't thinking so much in terms of a dime is now the equivalent of a dollar or is the equivalent of $5 in fiat today, but more so in terms of international trade. If the United States is buying barrels of oil or bales of wheat or bales of wool or bushels of wheat that we're importing or exporting, how do those types of things settle out when you've got different exchanges locally established and being run that set prices based upon local scarcity or surplus? And how does that balance out on an international trade basis?
Well, in my road to Ruta theory, all globalization ends with the crash of the unbacked fiat system. It ends for a while, because no one will trade with us when we crash the dollar. So I think as trade starts up again, say a couple of years down the line, 10 years down the line, who knows how long it will take to open up free trade again. But when that happens, it will start most likely on a barter type system. You've got, oil is a good example. You got one country wanting to who has extra oil, wants to get rid of a couple shiploads, and you've got the United States who made, 10 million belt buckles or whatever we're going to trade. Most likely, it won't be, although the banksters would want a global gold and silver monetary system, it'll be up to each country to decide what they want to use for their money. And it'll also be up to each country on, what they want to trade, who they want to trade with, and how those trades will be denominated. When this crashes, we really will go back to a free market type of system that isn't controlled in the computer networks of the bankers.
Okay, great. Thanks. Really appreciate your clarification on that. It's something that's always been kind of a head scratcher for me. I'm going to ask Alan to pick up things here and give you the next question.
Yes, hello again, Bix. Eric King on his website has named the names of certain individuals he considers to be silver manipulators. When, if ever, do you expect any of these individuals to be arrested?
Well, let me, I don't know who Eric had named. I can name a couple myself. Blythe Masters of JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon, Bill Daley, all those JP Morgan types, but they're, HSBC, and you can go down the list, and that hot potato of the silver short is what they're trying to protect. So, there are a lot of banks involved in the banking cabal. Arrests, I think they'll happen when we have the crash, and the crash will start off very similar to 2008. You might recall in 2008 when Hank Paulson went to Congress with a gun and said, "Give us $700 billion." They needed that, or the ultimate would have happened, which would have been the end of all paper and electronic monetary assets. That's where we're going to end up, and there's going to be people to blame, and those people such as Jamie Dimon and there are more of the riggers are behind the scenes rather than in front of the scenes. There's guys within Congress, there's guys in the military. I mean, the bad guys, as I call them, are kind of spread out, and they are scared to death right now that the world is waking up, and we are. I mean, we've come a long way. This is, you see all this stuff going around you now, but this has been going on for 100 years. It's just now that it's coming out into the open that people are waking up, and you got the Occupy Wall Street, Occupy San Francisco, Occupy everything now. Just wait until people start losing their checking account and their 401k. MF Global customers, 150,000 customers shut out of their accounts. These people are angry as can be, and when they lose everything, that's when they hit the streets. That's when the lawsuits come down and the prosecutions, and there's going to be a lot of anger out there. So as far as when, When it happens, we'll know. How's that?
So the crash comes first and then the consequences.
Yes.
So, thank you very much.
And the reason for that is the good guys want the blame to be placed squarely on the bad guys, squarely on the banking cabal and all these bad guys that have been rigging these markets and in holding us captive for so long.
Indeed.
Which brings us back to the timeline of the road to Ruta and the last questions that we're going to rack your brain with, Bix. The first question in these last three is going to come from Alan. Alan?
Okay, again, please tell us what you believe will happen with respect to the issuing of a new U.S. currency, including when that might happen and how that might affect domestic and international effects.
Okay. It is a little complicated, and as far as timeline, it was delayed. The original takedown of the system and reintroduction of some kind of a gold-backed system was December of 2008, and in January they were going to introduce the new dollar or new $100 bill. And if you've been on my website at roadtoruta.com, there's an article right at the top called "The Hidden Meanings in the New $100 Bill," and that new $100 bill was announced, and they showed it, and it has gold all over it. It's got talk of overthrowing the government. It is beautiful. It's a great bill. I do a full analysis on it. And then when Hank Paulson came in and kind of shut down the implosion, they pulled back the $100 bill. They again announced it in, I think it was the beginning of last year, and then they said there was a creasing problem with it, and they pulled it back again. Now they're saying when we do introduce it, once we make the announcement, it'll be 6 months until the bills start circulating. This is all hinging around the whole Road to Ruta concept, that you'll be able to go into your bank with a $100 bill or a $5 bill or a $10 bill and get that same amount in coin, in physical gold or silver coin. So the timing of it all is, it's happening now, and the beginnings of the takedown began when the U.S. We got downgraded on purpose. We did that on purpose. There's, nothing happens by accident these days in the monetary system. And then the takedown of MF Global is all part of it. You're going to see the implosion of Europe. I'm kind of now on the cliff high timeline of a March major crisis, as in the U.S. dollar crashes, or the euro is claimed to be worthless, and that anything. It's the system is so weak right now. Anything tips that scale a little farther, and it's game over. So I would say March. Things are going to continue to get worse. Ron Paul's going to continue to move up in the polls, saying, "Hey, I told you so. I told you so." And then March with the crash. And if you had to have a hard date, I've given myself a hard date that if it goes past this, I'm going to say I was wrong, and I always have been wrong. And that is December 2012, because there's so many other things that are going to go on then also. But if this game continues past that point, then I might as well hang up my coat and say, we tried our best to get rid of these guys, but we can't. And, welcome to the land of slavery to banks.
Well, we are all certainly with you, and I thank you.
Sure.
Okay, Bix, one more time, I'm going to put your old words back to you. In the last interview, you expressed the view that the K-winter would entail a complete collapse of derivatives, banking, and fiat money, everything, and that it would take a mere 6 to 8 months for that time frame to roll through. Did you really mean 6 to 8 years? In relation to the degree to which the K-wave cycle has been extended, and various people view that cycle as having been delayed by 11 to 15 years, 6 to 8 months seems a very short time period for a refractory coming out of it. Similarly, other analysts have the view that this great debt debacle has been built up and drawn out for decades. And wouldn't a short time frame just seem out of kilter with regard to how long it was pushed out for? What gives you the hope that the good guys have a plan and that bouncing along the bottom would only be a short 6 to 8 month time period to recover from decades of debt abuse?
Various things that I watch. One is the global implosion of the derivative market. It is happening now. It started in probably September. It kicked in October when MF Global wasn't able to cash in their CDSs. That is breaking down now. Europe's talking about declaring all credit default swaps illegal. There's all sorts of things happening right now. So I would say that the 6 month time period in my mind has begun. Probably began mid-October, will run through April or so, and then everything will be crashed by the summer. And the restart will be very fast, because once you wipe out all debt and all paper assets, you got to get on your feet and start, just to start transacting commerce. And the U.S. has been planning for this since the early 70s. And these aren't stupid people who have been running this road to Ruta thing out. They're very smart, and they've been planning for it. So, yeah, if it does go past, 2012, you can pretty much kiss everything that you know and love goodbye, because that will mean the bankers have won. They'd probably depopulate the earth. They have all these plans for one world government. If it goes on longer, we will lose, and the good guys will lose. That's why it has to happen quickly. And that's why the U.S. Treasury announced that when they announce the $100 bill again, it'll be 6 months before it is out there trading. And I do believe that's kind of symbolic of the use of gold and silver as money.
Okay, fair enough. The last question is actually from forum member Blankenby, and his question is, what is the current Road to Ruta timeline? Where are we?
Well, it has begun. The last time we talked in June, we were expecting the end of the summer and for the chaos to begin. The chaos has begun. It's partially the MF Global, partially Europe. It should run. I'm on Cliff High's timeline of March should be the ultimate big crash, and then hopefully we'll get Ron Paul in as president to see us through the transition. I think that's the plan. Keep an eye on Sarah Palin, believe it or not. I think she has been part of the plan all along. No matter what you think about Sarah Palin, she seems to connect to middle America, and a lot of people listen to what she has to say, and that all the things that she's been doing in the past 2 years, she's been kind of running for office without declaring that she's going to run for office. I think when the time is right, she's going to endorse Ron Paul and be running with him as vice president. I know that's a long shot, but when I made that call 2 years ago, nobody thought Ron Paul was even going to run. And I didn't think he was going to run because he didn't have the support. Now he declared that he's running. She has yet to endorse any candidate. And I just heard on Thursday, I think it was, I heard her on the news, and she kind of said she's leaning towards Ron Paul. And it's kind of all coming true. And so as far as my timeline, it's happening now. We're in it. Behind the scenes, things are imploding faster than you can see on the TV. The TV, they don't tell you much these days because they're trying to hide everything. But now through March, it's going to get worse and worse and worse and worse. And then with a March implosion, and then we try to get back on our feet. And by December, we'll probably have all our troops home and be working off some kind of gold and silver standard, trying to prepare for what happens after that.
Okay, thanks, Bix. And on behalf of Blank and B, I'd like to correct myself and let it be known that Blank and B is a she.
Okay.
We've been speaking with Bix Weir of roadtoruta.com. Thank you for sharing your time and thoughts with us today, Bix. We hope the listeners have gained insights into the topics we've been discussing, and we hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. If you didn't, you must not have paid attention to our no refunds, no exchanges policy, where we clearly state that all sales are final. The road to Ruta is a complex, winding journey, much of which will not be within your view. And while there are signs and waypoints along the way, and the opportunity to enjoy some sights, in particular, those of the gold and silver shops where you might consider exchanging your fiat for tangible coin and specie, those items that have held their value over the millennia, the path that this road, the road to Ruta, travels won't be a pleasant one. Since we are the Time Monk Radio Network, we are forward-looking, and we believe the past is for historians, as long as the lessons have been learned. We'll keep our eyes looking for what the future may hold. On behalf of Fox and all of the members of the Time Monk Radio Network, thank you, Bix. And in our tradition, may you and yours have many tasty pies to come.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bix.
You're welcome.
All right, Bix, have a great evening.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bix.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bix.
All right. Bye-bye.